So as for the Rocky franchise, I'd say for the over 47 years it's been around now, it's been very much a mixed bag. The first Rocky movie obviously left a huge mark on Hollywood and what boxing movies could be, and it's remained an absolute classic that people rewatch even to this day. Anyway, 30 years later, we met Adonis, the son of Apollo, who's an amateur boxer looking to make his way to winning the world title and follow in his father's footsteps. Since then, we've seen the character go through many trials and tribulations, from being trained by Rocky Balboa himself to fighting the son of the very man who killed his father in the ring, and now 7 years later in the Rockyverse timeline, we arrive at Creed 3, once again starring Michael B. Jordan, who's back as Adonis Creed, now in retirement after winning the World Heavyweight title on more than enough occasions to deservedly call it a day. However, he's met by his old friend Damien, who's fresh out of jail after being locked up for half his life, and it's fair to say that he hasn't returned without his intentions. He wants a shot at the heavyweight title, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get there, even if it means betrayal. See, there's some unfinished business between the two of them, as Damien very much feels that Adonis has lived out the life that should have been his, and having not heard from the guy that he probably once deemed his best friend for 18 years, he feels a sense of betrayal after being left behind and forgotten, having to endure life behind bars while he lives out what would have been his prime years as a fighter, and not having the chance to prove himself until now. This creates for an awkward situation for Adonis, who clearly feels guilt for somehow not keeping in touch with an old friend, and who rightly feels that the moral thing to do is give Damien opportunities in the ring, but by doing this, he blinds himself to the man's true intentions and even ignores warning signs from his coach and colleagues, and when what's done is done, he only has one choice to make things right and put history to rest. Now this film felt very unlike its predecessors. It's not just that Rocky isn't involved this time around, but it also went in a completely new direction with Adonis now training up-and-coming fighters instead of being in the ring himself. He's become very much a family man, prioritising a simpler life. It's a much more personal film that dives into Adonis and his past more than we've ever seen before, and so, what did I think? Well, I thought it was great. Creed 3 is not just a film about boxing, but about friendship, confrontation, family, hardship, and coming to terms with the past. Now, of course, I've just mentioned some of the themes of the film, but you should know, and I know, that themes are not what make a movie great, so let's dive into why the film is genuinely good. Firstly, the directing. This is a directorial debut for B. Jordan, and he said prior to the release that he took inspiration from anime and deems himself an anime nerd. And while I'm not a huge anime guy myself, I can admit that the camera work and the fight scenes are noticeably different to the previous outings, and in a good way. It's much beyond what any of the Rocky films obviously could have done, but even the previous Creed films never took on a direction like this film did, and it's really fucking entertaining. The guy really gets creative with certain scenes, and the camera work really shines through when it needs to. There's some really compelling stuff, especially in the fights, that really stand out and draw you in on a much greater level than most boxing sequences. While they may not be the longest scenes, they're definitely more engaging than anything, and it's only one of many things that make this film so great. Also is the acting. Michael B. Jordan is great, of course, and at this point knows the role well enough to deliver a performance that matches and adds to the guy that we know from Creed 1 and 2, but he's also stretching his abilities when it comes to the more emotional scenes in this film, where he has to confront his past and come to terms with a lot of issues. I mean, don't get me wrong, Hollywood seems to be injecting estrogen into basically every project they can nowadays, but it's very much justified this time around, considering the stakes and history at play, and it makes you feel for Adonis on a much deeper level. He's also fucking jacked, and you just can't help but respect the work that he's put in for the role over the years, regardless of the juice. As for Damien, Jonathan Majors smashes it out of the park. This guy's career has clearly taken a well-deserved boom in recent years, and he captures his character brilliantly. We all know that his performance was one of the very few things that were great about Ant-Man 3, turning the god-awful writing into something somewhat manageable to watch on the screen. And now with a script that doesn't want to make you tear out your eardrums, he's easily one of the best parts about this movie. He encapsulates in a nutshell a very troubled man, desperate to prove his worth and make his name known, something that was taken away from him at a young age, and he strikes you as the kind of guy who's not willing to just move on and accepts that half of his life was lost in a cell. He has a job to do, a purpose to fulfill, and whatever he needs to do to get there will be done, no matter what. And yeah, he's also fucking shredded. I've also never really been a big fan of Tessa Thompson, but shout out to her in this movie because she was actually really good, mainly thanks to the great chemistry between her and B. Jordan. Their relationship just feels so real in this movie, more raw and open than ever, and I imagine that over these 3 movies they've been able to gradually establish a greater friendship with each other, which helped dramatically with their portrayals and connection on screen. Yeah man, just great stuff. Now, as for some of the cons, contrary to what I criticise a lot of movies for, I will say that I wish the movie was somewhat longer and gave Damien a great development. Not to say that his character isn't fantastic, but with more time to establish this guy and what he's endured, and more of a past with these two characters instead of one sequence would have been great. It's a 2-hour movie, and I just would have expected a longer runtime given the premise of bringing in a character who was such an integral part of Adonis's life. I also think that Damien being straight out of prison and doing so well in the ring from the get-go was a bit rushed. Seeing him come back with the same ego and personality as he has here, but also realising that he simply just isn't good enough, would have been a lot more compelling. But I understand that the movie only has so much time, but that's just my take. But overall, this was a very well made movie, bringing something fresh to the Kreese story and allowing for a deeper dive into Adonis outside of the ring, packed with great performances, wholesome moments, and fantastic cinematography. Go see it if you haven't already, if you're a fan of the first two, or just looking for a good movie in the midst of, modern Hollywood. And yeah, like the video, subscribe, all that jazz if you want. Won't force you though. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.